Hello everybody, welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2021 science fiction anthology film Future Fear. A film that is written and directed by Ken May. And this is a Wild Eye released film. Now, don't turn off people, I know what you might be thinking. This is Wild Eye, it's bound to be bad. And it's an anthology film which may well be a recipe for disaster. Well, is it a recipe for disaster? Well, a bit, I'm not going to lie. This, for an anthology film, is certainly not the strongest anthology film I've seen for quite a while. However, there were a couple of stories in this that I thought were worthwhile and quite thoughtful, if I'm being particularly honest. But I think the problem with this film is, I think because those of you who watch a lot of Wild Eye films, and you know, there are fans of Wild Eye movies out there, of course there are. A lot of the Wild Eye films that I've watched, you know, they are disjointed, poor editing, and you're confused and convoluted, so you're not really sure what's going on, and they just end up being like scenes sewn together that don't make a lot of sense. So it took me a while, I'm not going to be honest, I didn't realise this was an anthology film until at least 15 minutes into it, because like the wraparound story, and it's very much like VHS, you know, the film VHS, where they walk in and they find them videotapes and they start watching them. It's a little bit like that. It's set in the future, something's going on, not really clear, and then this woman finds these historical recordings and starts watching them, and that's where we get our anthology tales from. Now, some of the acting in a lot of these tales is questionable. Some of them are very Wild Eye, and some of them are not, and they're a little bit better quality. And I'm not sure what's gone on here. Maybe they found a number of short stories that they had access to, and they've like stuck them all together, because some didn't seem to fit the others, if you like. They're all just kind of like sci-fi. So the first story is a pretty bad one, even though the effects weren't the worst I've ever seen for a low budget film, and it's essentially about, well, I don't want to spoil any of them, but there's a sex scene and some spiders, probably the worst sex scene I've ever seen of all time, and some spiders, and it was a pretty forgettable story, and and it was pretty bad. It wasn't a great start to the film, if I'm being particularly honest. There was another story about cannibals in the future that was so ridiculous. It just looked like this woman being chased round a building site by some guys in tatty clothing. That wasn't any good or interesting really at all. And then there was one about a pandemic. Now this is, for me, the one that I was most interested in. Obviously it's quite relevant. It was reasonably lengthy as well in regards to an anthology story about a pandemic and these few remaining scientists trying to find a cure. It actually has some quite poignant moments in it. So yeah, that was certainly watchable. There was another one that I thought was really bad, arguably the worst, about this guy being chased by some other guys, ends up in these woods, and this has got a bit of a Children of the Corn type vibe to it, and it was just bad. The acting was really, really not very good in this one. I certainly don't think so. The idea in the story was okay, creepy kids is usually, good fare for horror and sci-fi. It was just not done particularly well. The effects were pretty poor, the acting was pretty bland, the sound design was pretty poor, so it just didn't work for me, this one at all. It was probably the weakest. And then there was another one that actually looked quite thoughtful and interesting, but because the last one was so poor, I'd kind of checked out a little bit. I think this next story they should have put straight after the pandemic one, where it had your attention, and it was quite a well-told story, but they didn't. They put it after this running around in the woods thing that was really bad, so I checked out a little bit again. So I didn't get everything that were going on in it, but it seemed quite a thoughtful one. There was like holograms and modelling and all this kind of stuff, and the effects are actually okay in it. So I would like to tell you a little bit more about that one, but like I said, my attention just wasn't fully there because of what came before it. And then the final one was actually a fairly decent one as well, with an interesting twist. It was like a woman kidnapped, like thrown in this cell, treated horrifically for a period of time, and then the outcome isn't really what you're going to expect. I certainly didn't, so I appreciate that surprise. So there were 2 or 3 things in here that were certainly watchable, and 2 or 3 things in here that were really pretty bad. So for an anthology film, it's weak. For a wild eye film, better than some I have seen, if I'm being honest, but it's still not a world beater, which is why I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 10. Fans of sci-fi, fans of anthology films, there's a couple of stories in here you might find interesting. The rest of them I don't think you'll be particularly impressed with. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you like this review for future fear, and I will be back, of course, with plenty more content on the channel very, very soon.